Committee Room 30.
It will be broadcast in public session and will be recorded and streamed throughout Parliament buildings and online. Members content then that we formally alter the agenda to take the Assembly research briefing in closed session at their request. Is that agreed?
Yep.
Okay. The stage member happy to take apologies. I think we've received one from Saoirse Eastwood, and Mr. Nesbitt will be slightly late. At this stage, members ask if there are any declarations of interest. None? Okay. Item 3 then, members. Chairperson's business. As agreed by the committee, I met informally yesterday with the British Holiday and Home Parks Association, and the clerk has kindly sent a note of that meeting. Advised members that following last week's exchange, the department has requested that I informally meet with the Permanent Secretary on the 7th of May 2024. Are members content that I meet with the Permanent Secretary on behalf of the committee?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 4 then, members, is draft minutes, which are at page 7 of our packs, and ask if members are content that they are a true and complete record of the committee's deliberations, and I will sign them as such on behalf of the committee. Is that agreed?
Yeah.
Thank you. Item 5 then, members, is matters arising. Are there any matters arising from the minutes that aren't covered in the agenda later today? No. Okay. We'll then move swiftly to item 6, which is City and the Growth Deals update. Refer members to the clerk's covering note at page 19 and a written brief provided by the department at page 28, and also refer members to recent related correspondence on McGee, Mazin and sub-regional growth plans at page 43. Good morning, colleagues. And the city growth and updated reports from 2022 to 2023 at page 55. This stage, members, I'm delighted to welcome to the committee Kieran McGarity, Head of City Deals and Programme at the department, Caroline Linus, Deputy Programme Director of City Deals, and also Adrian Grimshaw, Capital Advisor, City and Growth Deal Programme. Colleagues, you're all very welcome to the committee this morning, and at this stage I'm content to hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. With your agreement, I'll just make a few opening remarks that will complement the paper we provided. Again, thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee on the City and Growth Deal Programme, and in particular the role of the department, including its arm's length bodies, Invest NI, Tourism NI Screen, playing in the delivery of this important programme. The City and Growth Deal's investment across the entire programme from the public and private sectors expect to be in excess of £1.5 billion over the next 10 years. It is a long-term infrastructure project that presents significant opportunity to drive sustained and inclusive growth across Northern Ireland. The 4 deals will each in their own way, and importantly collaboratively, play a key role in delivery of the Minister's economic vision and of course wider executive priorities. Through partnership and collaboration between business, academia and government, the City Deal projects will strengthen our offering in key sectors such as life and health sciences, digital and creative industries, advanced manufacturing and low carbon technologies. It will also accelerate deployment of next generation digital capabilities across our industrial base, supporting the drive to increasing productivity levels. Importantly for our tourism sector, the programme will deliver a series of new world-class visitor attractions to create the opportunity for a further step change in the visitor offering and build on the success already achieved in terms of tourism growth. These new attractions are designed to encourage visitors to stay longer and spend more. Importantly for our SME base, there will be a number of programmes designed to support them de-risk the development of new products and services. The launch earlier this month by Belfast Region City Deal of the Augmented City Challenge competition provides SMEs with the opportunity to develop innovative proof of concepts and prototypes using immersive technologies such as augmented reality, virtual reality and mixed reality. And a key benefit of this programme, particularly for the deal partners in the Belfast region and other regions, will be that the competition will provide insights to support local councils who are designing these new visitor attractions, and we give examples such as Belfast Stories. In terms of delivery of the deals, progress has been positive. The Belfast Region City Deal is the most advanced of the 4 deals. The department has approved 12 projects across tourism, innovation and digital spheres, with a value of £335 million and estimated to create 6,000 jobs. A number of those projects have already received planning approval, appointed integrated design teams, and on the most advanced projects, such as AMIC, main contractors have been appointed with construction work to begin shortly. While understandably the focus of these projects being around planning approvals, appointment of contracts, which are of course key milestones, we have in parallel been working closely with the universities to support early mobilisation of these projects. And we're doing this through Invest NI, Innovate UK and UKRI. In the next 12 to 18 months in the Belfast deal, we are anticipating a further 6 projects to be submitted for approval. These will be important areas such as innovation, entrepreneurship, access to finance, digital infrastructure and tourism. In relation to the Derry City and Strabane deal, we are working closely with the Council and its partners such as Ulster University and the North West College to ensure that the next stage of the deal, financial close, can be signed hopefully this summer. This will be a key milestone in the progression of the deal and be a huge boost to the North West. With regard to the Mid-South West deal, we are working in partnership with the councils there to support heads of term signing for this autumn. And while the Causeway Coast deal, they've reached an important landmark I'm sure you're aware of this morning when they will be signing heads of terms for their £100 million deal. A great step forward for that deal. In terms of our next steps in the department, our focus will be on supporting each of the deals and their partners progress projects through approval and mobilisation stages. And a key task for those promoters will be in expanding their teams to drive forward delivery. Over the coming months, importantly, we will see projects significantly ramp up in the numbers employed in individual projects. That's already beginning to happen in some of their key innovation projects, and you'll see advertising for them shortly. Parallel to this, the department will continue to engage with promoters to ensure that its programmes, and importantly those within our ALBs, are designed to support and importantly accelerate the delivery of those projects. This is key. We will also be working alongside promoters and deal owners to ensure that the programme can support delivery of our net zero targets. And this is both via construction, through, for example, delivering debris arm accident levels, but importantly during the operational phase, when we want the deployment of those projects, for example, the I4C project in Ballymena, looking at clean tech, or the digital twin project in Belfast, looking at sustainability in terms of transport, with companies such as Artemis and Spirit. There are also importantly some exciting proposals beginning to emerge which have the potential to support real gains in this important area, and so we are working with those deals and their partners to bring these forward as quickly as possible for approval. In conclusion, the department, including its arm's length bodies, are fully committed to working with local partners and indeed other departments to drive delivery of this programme. Positive progress has been made, but yet much remains to be done to deliver the ambition and benefits we all want to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Kieran. I'm going to just open up then to members who may have some questions. Patrick.
Yeah. Look, firstly, thank you for your presentation. I'm going to speak about the Northwest naturally, but I think it touches on the other city deals as well. So all the feedback that we've got from council, from officials, and from our local council team as well has been so positive about the engagement between yourselves and themselves. So just want to firstly thank you for that. I think it's a really positive step, and it shows good, I suppose, working between councils and departments as well. Just on that as well, I'm conscious that a lot of the work you're going to be doing is capital, and that's obviously the nature of the programme and what you're doing. But one of the things that I would be keen to see is that relationship builds and continues beyond the delivery of city deals as well. So I'm keen to hear just a bit more about how you intend to do that and how you intend to work with councils into the future to support them, because there's a key role, particularly in the Northwest, to drive that innovation and to drive that whole piece. McGee and the Northwest Regional College being a key part of that, I think, is really important. So just keen to hear how you intend to continue that into the future.
Thanks, Parg. Absolutely, these are capital projects, and our focus is not on the build. Our focus is on what these things do and how they will deliver inclusive growth right across Northern Ireland. And if I look at the Northwest, and I sit on a group, the Northwest City Region, the all-Ireland approach to that is how do we build up capability and capacity, and that's a challenge for government, right across government, to ensure our programmes and policies are aligned, and that's what we are looking to do. And I mentioned earlier about that work with Innovate UK. And UKRI, I met with the Chief Executive who was over last week, and he was able to meet with the committee, but he's aware about how he can get UK government funding better aligned across into Northern Ireland to deliver that place agenda. So we need to be working through Invest NI, the department, our colleges and universities to support business drive growth. So we need to make sure that we are focused on helping businesses de-risk the development of those projects. And that's a challenge for us. We need to work harder in the commercialisation angle. And so we are now looking at our programmes as how do we make it easier, quicker to access the support that is needed to exploit the knowledge that's coming out. And let's deal with the Northwest in particular, so CEDRA or CADRIC. So cognitive analytics. We have a job to do in that Northwest region potentially around RegTech, working with ATU and others, but how do we get more businesses engaged with ISRC up in Derry? And I visit Derry recently or frequently, and work closely with colleagues up there. So how do we support them, the university and the college, to do more? Outcome agreements for colleges and universities will be really important. We need to be clear what we want of them and how they can support delivery of that ambition. But the key really is a challenge, is that city and growth deals is a huge investment in our infrastructure, but it'll only be delivered if we get our alignment right. So again, come back to the linkage with the Northwest. So if McGee is going to 10,000 students, what type of students do we want in the Northwest? How does that align with the infrastructure we're putting in place, whether it's the Grad Med School in Cetric, based in Alton Galvin, looking at some of the huge work they're doing in genomics and stuff. How do we get the skill set to build up capability and build clusters around that there? Because that needs to be the focus for us moving forward, and that's a challenge, and it links back to my other responsibilities in the department is on place and sub-regional work, and I know colleagues around the table will be interested in this in terms of what are sub-regional strengths, how do we build on those strengths, and how do we differentiate in some way and build capability and capacity. So the key is that, and we're looking at how Invest in I aligns its programme support. That's a process we are undergoing within the department now to better align. And that goes through skills provision, higher level apprenticeships, things like that. How do we support delivery of these projects?
Sure, just one more point on that as well. I think that's 100%, and you've touched on really the key thing for me, which as on Invest NI, delivering as part of this, and on the outcome agreements as well. Because to me that's imperative. They have that not as something that we do afterwards when these projects are up and running, but something that's actually built into the framework around getting them completed. So I think that's really positive. So in terms of that, coming out of these city deals, you intend for Invest NI to be the lead partner in following up on these, or does that differentiate strands? So would you have somebody from one strand of the department following up with universities, Invest NI following up with others? What way do you intend for the breakdown of that?
So I'll give you a real practical example. So we're looking at postgraduate awards. So discretionary postgraduate, the department is discretionary awards, postgraduate awards. At the present time, we leave it's to the university to determine what way movement. In the future, when we're looking at it, it may be that we look and sort of how do we pivot towards what type of postgraduate or need for Derry. That would not be responsibility for Invest, that would be responsibility for colleagues in the department to look at. So it will depend what the issue of that is. We are ready, again, Invest and I will support companies to mobilise, and they are doing that already. In fairness, they're looking, for example, with AMIC, on trying to how do they get clusters of companies working together with AMIC and supporting them through grant for R&D. So there's not a simple answer to that point. It depends who in the department is looking. And again, with our further education college, so the outcome agreements with the colleges, how does Northwest Regional College fit in to that region? How does the new Strabane College, how does it fit in and deliver against the strengths? That might be a skills provision or apprenticeship. It could be a range of issues, not necessarily Invest in I. Invest in I will be key in terms of their engagement, because they're closer to the industry in terms of that focus. They're there to support industry. They have the levers there to do it. So it is their task to ensure that they, again, help universities or help business access into that, help universities access into business.
Look, it's really encouraging to hear, so I'm looking forward to working with you all on that, and obviously you've built a really good relationship with council and with councillors as well, so hope that continues in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Phil?
Thanks, Chair. I couldn't agree more in terms of the potential of the growth deals, in terms of business development, tourism, and being economic drivers. My kind of constituency covers two of them, the Mid and East Antrim aspect of the Belfast City deal. So in terms of the kind of the I4C centre at St Patrick's Ballymena, that development is hugely exciting in terms of the potential that it can be for the Ballymena town itself, but the wider region. So, I mean, can I ask, in terms of prior to the building and everything being ready to go, what engagement is ongoing with the department to ensure that when we have the building, we have the right technology, the right focus and engagement with businesses. I mean, obviously Ballymena has huge potential for hydrogen, being a hub right across this island and these islands. So I'm just kind of keen to know what engagement's taking place at this early stage to ensure that it's going to be successful.
Yeah, that's a good point, Philip. And the answer is we've been constantly engaged with I4C, because the focus of us is not in the building, it's what it does and how it supports the growth in that area, is that clean tech. So again, this links back to other projects that we are funding through the Complementary Fund, for example, and High Tech NI. How do they link through? The links we are encouraging then, again, with the council through to AMIC, doing the links there, and then Northern Regional College. So there's linkages, trying to create those linkages. Now the key then is pulling industry in and looking at it forward. And again, the challenge for us is how do we support that industry mobilising moving forward, and how create the pipeline. So the work is ongoing, and the focus is there. But the challenge, I think, for us is, I mentioned in my opening remarks about this collaborative approach, and maybe Adrian might want to come in here. We are looking at net zero. This is where a big issue for. So Mid-South West, we think, is a real opportunity there. And how do we get AMIC, I4C and all, to make sure they're not sitting in isolation? So Ballymena is going to be a cluster there around that hydrogen. How does that link in with what our plans are in Mid-South West? Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. So renewables, renewable energy is obviously a huge area. It's very complex. Hydrogen focus in itself, there's a number of ways in which that can be both developed and then utilised. So the centres that are generated across through the city growth deals across all the hill regions will have to have specific focus on what they are bringing to that particular innovation challenge. I know at I4C that they are engaging with the industry on the local industry and what they expect the centre to provide for them. We know that they have made preparations for the procurement of their design team, and they're close to appointing on that. And they also have a specialist engaged as well now to look at the operational phase. And why that is important is because we don't want to create buildings, and the promoters don't want to create buildings that don't perform functionally. So that operator expertise is critical to get in at an early stage to shape what that facility will look like, and that work is just about to start. There has been confirmed market interest, of course, in that facility. We hope to see an operator engaged to inform the design by the end of this year.
That's all good to hear. And then just secondly, as I say, North Antrim covers two constituencies. You rightly pointed out that today is the day where the heads of agreement are being signed, Causeway, Coast and Glens. That's very, very welcome. I think Causeway, Coast and Glens is the only deal that covers a single council area. So,
Derry City and Strabane.
Fair. Okay, it's the second. One of two.
Two unitary deals, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, tourism is obviously vitally important in that location, and I mean we want to ensure that the growth deal and all the projects help to do, as you said at the start, bring more tourists and help them stay for longer. Infrastructure is key to that, because I know every summer my office will be getting calls about blockages here or lack of infrastructure provision here. So we want to bring the tourists, but we need to ensure that as part of this that we have the appropriate infrastructure to ensure that we can accommodate the tourists, particularly during the summer seasons. And then I'm just making that point. And then one last point, I didn't see the Grow the Glens project on there. It's maybe not a Department for Economy project, but it's also a very key component of that growth deal in terms of trying to keep people in a rural part of a constituency employed and provide opportunities so they don't have to travel into Belfast for their work.
Absolutely, and on infrastructure, I deal with other points on the growth end. Yes, I think that's DFC or DARE, one of the others. So really the projects only report on today, just for clarity for the committee, is only the projects that DFE is accountable for. So there are other excellent projects where other departments are taking forward, our DARE, DFC. On the infrastructure piece, Philip absolutely was involved in the Giants Causeway project 20 years ago, or 25 years, whenever it was, and trying to move that forward, and the issues of moving people around and moving people around, but keeping them in the area. And I know my colleagues in tourism and I are working closely with the council and have been and doing that, and we are working with the FI on this specific on the infrastructure piece. We again, as a department, have taken the lead in that project through tourism and I to move that forward. It has been approved, and that's allowing that heads of terms to be signed today. So our focus very much, we recognise that as and the Minister is very keen, as you're well aware, in terms of the importance of tourism and the drive to keep international visitors here in the area longer. So we will be working through Tourism NI with partners there to enhance the offering that is there. The deal itself has decided that's the amount of funding that is going for tourism. That's grand. That doesn't, there are other opportunities I'm sure will come on board, and the region will have to take advantage of those.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Philip. Gary?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to you all for coming in. I think it's fair to say not everybody has been happy with the speed in which some of these projects obviously have progressed. The Minister had indicated that there has been a change in terms of how maybe yourselves and officials engage with the promoters, with councils. I just want to get a feel. Obviously, we're starting to see some progress. I think of our own city deal in the northwest. The DNA is finally over the line as such, and hopefully we see spades and shovels in the ground shortly. But what has changed? How have you done things differently? And I appreciate it's not all the side of the department either. You're relying on people to bring forward the evidence or whatever they need to bring forward. But what has changed?
I think the Minister's made it clear that he wants to move these projects forward at a quicker pace than before. I think he had publicly said that he was concerned, loss of momentum and moving forward, and we're responding to that and looking at how we can do more and increase that support that we give to promoters, and that is basically the change. And again, coming back to the points before me about the role of Invest NI and increasing that focus, and indeed TNI and NI Screen, our arm's length bodies. How do we get in and support promoters? These are challenging projects. I think that's the key point, and it's I suppose managing expectations at the start of the process. And I deal with colleagues in Scotland, the Scottish deal here. 2 to 3 years from identifying a project to get the heads of terms is not unusual, because the challenge we have in DFE is every one of our projects carries a revenue tail. And that's the challenge for promoters, and that risk falls back on the promoters. So we are then helping those projects to de-risk, and that's about industry mobilisation, but that's the confidence level that the university needs and as we're moving forward. So our focus, we're, in very simple terms, Gary, we are just really ramping up our support to councils, looking and making decisions on issues which previously we may have sought to get clarified at OBC stage, at the outline business case. We are now making decisions to say, look, we are content. There is a risk, but we are content to address those issues at full business case.
Right.
So that's the difference. And again, you're all aware of the budgetary pressure. So what's the risk? Is that you give approval to a project at outline business case, you start spending public money. These projects mostly are in around 80 or 85% funded from the public purse. I mean, from central government, from UK, and the UK government is funding, as you know, Gary, the innovation and digital ones. And therefore, there is a risk that could be, if the project doesn't proceed at full business case, for whatever reason, the cost route, deemed to be by others nugatory expenditure. So now we are looking forward, now we are looking forward to say, look, some of those issues, uncertainty that we may have been looking for in an earlier stage, we are content to leave until more detail, a greater level. You never get certainty, a greater level of certainty is assured. So it's that has probably changed the degree of support we're putting in, and then our approach to that risk appetite, I think.
Yeah, I suppose what we're doing is releasing money earlier in the process to enable, that design and development work to take place, and putting greater emphasis then on the full business case as a secondary decision point.
That'll be welcome news, because there's quite a number, obviously, of projects sitting at OBC development stage, and that'll be good news for right across the board. The other question I have, just is in terms of the projects listed, I had put a question to the Communities Minister last week just in relation to his remit and what projects sit within the Department for Communities, and he came back, obviously, in relation to the Walled City Regeneration Project, but he had said that he has an interest in the Central Riverfront project as well. However, he says that doesn't sit within his department. Does that sit under your department? So it's obviously not on the list, but no. Do you know who does that sit under? And is this list that you've provided, does it stand still, or is it going to be added to?
That's the list that the deal has. They're the projects the deal has identified.
Yeah.
We have been identified as the accountable department for the list that we have provided. I think the riverfront regeneration again, it may be DFI, and I'm not sure again whether the two departments, again back to Phil's point about the causeway, we had some interaction with colleagues in DFI about. Is it an infrastructure project in the North Coast or is it a tourism project?
Right.
This is where the accountability lies. So I'm not sure, to be honest, Gary, where that lies. But it's not a DFE project.
Right. No, it's a £65 million project, and what I like about these types of projects are, people really see the difference that they make.
Oh, yeah.
There's some fantastic projects in City Deal, but with respect, a lot of them, the general public will not see the personal benefit out of that, whereas the likes of those riverfront projects, people see it and they can see the tangible change. But I'll follow that up, obviously, with the relevant department, but thanks for your input.
David.
Thank you, Kieran, and thank you for your energy and seeing the potential of this, because it's exactly what innovation, Green and I, R&D, tourism, all that is exactly what we need. But is there just a question around? And thank you from Lagan Valley, the Hillsborough project's a brilliant example of this, of where the public actually can see an interface with it, and it is. We had a debate yesterday in the chamber, which was really. Looking forward as well on the Maze Lunkesh side, and what that could actually add to the tourism bit around as well, which is fabulous from my area. But just to look at the procurement process and the delivery process, if you like, and the timelines, with inflation running sort of colossal rates or over the last while, but this was set a couple of years back. Does that create a risk to any project where the budget was set but we haven't got the full, the costing is dramatically increased?
Simple answer is yes.
Okay.
Inflation is a risk, and that's the challenge. I come back to the frustration among all parties about why these aren't moving quicker. It's because promoters, in this stage, if we deal with Destination Royal Hills, but just pick that out, David, in your constituency, is that the council is underwriting that. So there's a risk. So it needs to, what that means then, and this is the balance. And for those, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Audit Office report about, in capital projects, why they go. There's an underestimation of the cost and an overestimation of the delivery time, an underestimation of how long it's going to take. And the challenge for us, David, is that you need to build in a high level of allowance at the start of the project, and that's tough. So it's tough for people to get their head around that 45% of your costs could be set aside for an allowance. People just don't, and therefore there's a tendency to and that creates a challenge then as the design develops, and there's any delays at all. Construction was at one stage run construction of 11, 12, 13%. I think it's down to 4.5%, the BCIS indices now. But it doesn't take much for a big number to increase. So it is a challenge, and that affordability challenge then, and back to Carolyn's point, a full business case. You don't really get a sense until Royal Hills is slightly different. You've got 4 component parts in it, and the challenge for us and the council is, well, what happens if you build component part 1, 2, what happens about 3? And those are challenges, and this is the pressure again on the affordability, because people again come back to Gary's point maybe about the delays. The risk is that if costs start spiralling out of control, well, where does the council go? And the fear, or concern, or the reality, it may come back to central government. And if it comes back to central government, it'll come back to the department who gave approval in the first place, which then limits the expenditure. So if it comes back to DFE, for example, that's funding that a future minister or whoever's there would have to make decisions about, well, what has to be cut to meet that cost if that was the case. So it is a risk, and that's why it's so important why we get in early with CPD, our design teams. Adrian, as our capital advisor, works very closely with them, and we have long discussions about levels of allowance. Long discussions about, and the difference, and when you're talking big numbers, 1% or 2% difference is a considerable sum, because the council has to find out, and we look at the contribution that council is put into it. So it is a risk. We believe when we are bringing the outline business case forward for approval that it is affordable within the envelope that has been provided by the city and growth deals. So I'm confident at the point in time when we make that decision, and on the timescales that are presented for delivery, which is another challenge, that that they are delivered. The challenge then is back into the council or the promoter, university, whatever, and it has happened, in fairness to the universities, have stepped up. Where there has been cost pressures, they have stepped up and provided that additional thing, because or else you're faced with your value engineering. And once you start value engineering, you're value engineering the benefits as well. And then you're looking at the whole value for money thing, and that comes back to the earlier discussion we had about full business case. So it is a risk area, but we are, David, and we think we are managing it in an appropriate way in accordance with the guidance.
That's good, and that discussion, I suppose, around building that in at the start, and I appreciate that's difficult but it is because that inflation at 10, 11, 12% was last year, the year before, but it builds. So that 4 is not just 4; it hasn't dropped.
Yeah.
It's still 4. But can you advise then if any of the city deal money is financial transaction capital or reform? It's not. So it doesn't have, nothing has to go back on.
The City and Growth Deal funding is matched UK government, as you know, for innovation and digital, and matched by the executive. It is a ring-fenced fund, which is great for the promoters. You know, so it is there and is spent as and when required within the envelope.
Okay. And then finally, just I suppose again, this is as you come into Belfast, the public transport part and the active travel part of, you know, people, if we're trying to move, and net zero, you've said is one of the key components that overrides all of this. For people coming into Belfast, it's been able to move them once you get into Belfast, and the glider route and all of those things. Can you give an update on the public transport element of it, or the active travel, where we are and how that?
Unfortunately, I can't do it because that's DFI, and much as I'd love to share it, I think it's an important project, but that's for DFI to advise it, or indeed the deal, the Belfast Region City deal. It's not within the remit of DFE.
Right.
Okay, thank you for all your answers so far in your presentation. It's really, I'm coming back, I suppose, on what David was saying. Delays to any of these projects means higher costs. We're just living in a state of inflation. And there has been significant delays in the dairy projects. Can you explain what some of those delays were? We have one project over the line, and we have 12 projects in the Belfast City deal over the line. And there's a few of theirs are still at the same stage as ours, but like we've really battled to get the one that we got over the line, and we're very pleased that it is. But can you explain to me why have there been delays, and where the problems lay, and how can we overcome them in the future? And also, can you just explain, when you say you will probably get into signing close to the summer, are you saying that they will be moving in with approval from the Department of Finance by the summer, or will they have funding fully in place by the summer? And I mean all projects. And are any of those projects experiencing more problems in terms of risk than others that are waiting that approval?
I'll deal with the final. So I'll deal with the DFE, because that's all I can deal with DFE projects in the summer. So we have the Cadrick proposal, which is due for casework on the 13th of June. And we would then hope that would go through the approvals process in June and on the DOF, and that's the DFE project. And we have 2 projects and the programme business case in relation to dairy. Mm-hmm. That's the 2 projects we have in dairy, and then in Strabane we have the North West Regional College, and that is set for early June.
Yeah, the 6th of June.
6th of June. So they're the projects that we have within our remit,
Mm-hmm.
and we are confident, we have no indicator that they will move forward for approvals. And if they move forward for approvals, because the Grad Med School is an Inclusive Futures Fund, it's a separate process. So with those projects moving forward, that's UK government funding in a sense captured. So that should allow the heads of terms to be signed. So that's just where we are at the present time. Mm-hmm. In relation to why it has taken so long, it's a combination of factors. Mm-hmm. And it probably goes back to where we were, and the conversation I was having earlier, or discussion I was having earlier, in terms of managing expectations, what these projects were about. If we look at the process, let's look at dairy. So it didn't start at the same time as Belfast, came after. So that's in terms
not
of
that considerably time after.
And the onus is on the project promoters to sort of identify what projects they want to bring forward, and the deal has to agree with them. The deal, i.e. the council owner, the Dairy City of Strabane Council, agreed with the university that it would bring forward the innovation projects. It brought Carl and Cedra. They were 2 separate projects at one stage. They then became one. That was part of their considerations back on inflation in those days, was on the cost, working within that cost envelope. So that takes time. in terms of the university thinking what it was going to do. So they brought that back into one project. The other focus then in Sinead and moving it forward is these are new types of projects. Translational research is not something we've ever funded before at that scale. So it's not, we're not building a building just for infrastructure. You know, I know you appreciate that, but so it's the UK government are going to approve Cadric and need to approve it. So they need to be satisfied that what stuff goes on inside it is what local industry needs in Northern Ireland, and that's been a challenge in demonstrating.
There's cognitive analysis programmes within the Belfast project as well.
It's not the same.
It's not the same,
not
but
the same.
it's there. It's that type of new innovative programmes.
It's AI. There's a much wider base. So and again, the comparison was with GII, Momentum 1.0. I think that's building on the ESIT and CSIT functions around cyber security, and there's a strong industrial base there wrapped around that in terms of the cyber security, and you'll be aware from that in the growth of that sector. So that's been the challenge, and we've been working with the council to move forward. We have now got to a point now where we believe that the business case is robust, and I'll be bringing it forward, recommending it for approval in June to move forward. It has taken longer than we all would have wanted. Obviously, I sit on the dairy programme board, and I sense the frustration, but we are now moving into this delivery stage and trying to move forward. And it links back to that wider discussion there on new opportunities, and it was mentioned about alignment. So the opportunity, where does RegTech fit in? So North West City, how does that fit into what Carl and Cedar want to do? What does industry want? And we are building relationships between what's happening in advanced manufacturing in Phillips constituency, in the Church constituency in North Belfast there. How do we link that AMIC with what's happening up in Celtic and make sure they're not duplication? And that's just taking a bit of time, but it's built. The two universities are working collaboratively together on that.
But time means money, and
I
that's
fully appreciate that.
Is the problem.
I fully appreciate it. And also there's an expectation, not unreasonable, for people to start seeing delivery, and it is taken. But again, just to be contextualise this, and it's not to minimise it or to start trying to explain it away. City and growth deals, if you look at the experience in Scotland, from the idea, these are concepts. But getting 80 or 85% approval in terms of moving forward in GB, they do not fund after OBC. They don't give any funding out until full business case is signed off. We recognise that would, all the risk then would fall on the promoter. So we are trying to move things forward at a pace, but at the same time, I think a term would describe to me, but other members agree, is speed with care. You know, speed because of industry and the frustration people want to move forward, but care in the sense that the significant amount of public money going in, the transparency around how it's spent, what it's being used for. And we have had discussions, again through Invest in I with Matrix and other people, Sinead, in terms of what actually is going to go on the centre. How is ISRC, which is up there, how does it grow? Where's the demand for what they're saying? Because the challenge we get from industry is what happens sometimes in universities is what academics want to see, and not necessarily what industry need to see. And these are, and I come back to the point, these are translational. These are at the higher level of TRL level 6, 7 and 8. They are not down at earlier stage research at 2 to 5 or whatever else may be.
And when you were giving your presentation, you said your department is building that momentum in order to get these projects over the line. And does that mean building your teams within the department in order to get these over the lines as well? And what kind of, what does that momentum look like in the department, can I ask?
It looks like getting our programmes aligned and making sure that, again, higher level apprenticeships. So what type of higher level apprenticeship, for example, might be required in cognitive analytics in Derry? Working at McGee. I'm working with Mega on another project in Mid-South West who are doing degree apprenticeships. That's how we are pivoting around to try and deal with that pace again. How does that fit in with Cadric? How's robotics? How's Cadric going to fit in with CAFRE? On agri innovation. So that's the challenge we have to do. But particularly where the focus will be moving forward has got to be with the companies, and Invest in I will work directly with those companies and encouraging them to engage and support them to engage with the knowledge that's that'll be in those institutions.
I mean, I'm very excited, but I just want to see movement on the ground in order to get that, because Derry has the lowest higher level apprentice than any other space in Northern Ireland colleges, and that's regrettable. And it's these innovation projects at that high end that will be attractive to businesses in order to have that thing. Just on the wider, can I ask, just on the wider city and growth plans, there's an indication of 6,000 jobs that it will create. Is that something that you're still standing by and in that job growth aspect?
So each of those 6,000 is formed by every time we approve a project, a business case is done and it outlines the benefits, and the promoters, universities or councils are given an estimate of what value that will create, whether in productivity or jobs, and we are using and agreeing with those. The challenge then will be translating it, making sure they happen, and it might not be jobs, it might be productivity, and that come back to full business case.
Have you broken that down to city deals, individual city deals?
Each individual project has a business case, and each individual. Now the overall deal, so I come back to Belfast, the two governments agreed with Belfast Regional, so at a time when we had no ministers, the Department of Finance and DLUC agreed with the deal that there would be 20, they set the overall ambition for the deal, and DOF, Department of Finance, is the SRO for the overall City Deal programme, and they will be working with DLUC about monitoring, did it deliver, did the £700 million investment come from the Executive and UK Government into the Belfast region and deliver against that ambition in the longer term. And that's part of the monitoring framework. Our responsibility and my responsibility and my team's along with Vest is our job is to ensure that the projects we have approved deliver what they say they were going to do in the business case, first of all, in the OBC, and those business cases will be refined as full business case, and the benefits will change.
Okay, looking forward to June and the sign-offs.
Jonathan?
We're struggling a bit. Again, Jonathan.
Try again there, sorry Johnny, just can't hear you. No problem. Maybe I'll ask a few questions then while we try and fix Jonathan. So thank you very much for that presentation. Obviously particularly welcome the progress in the Belfast City.
Can hear me now.
Jonathan, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, Chair, it wouldn't allow me to come off
No
mute.
problem.
I think something had to do from your end. Look, thanks very much for the presentation. I sense there's always been a great deal of excitement around city deals from a member perspective, but also filtering down to local councillors and indeed local communities. I suppose my focus has always been on my own regional city deal, that being the mid-south, the mid-southwest, and I suppose probably there's been frustration expressed about time and what time means and money. Could the participants actually outline what they believe the regional strengths of the mid-southwest deal to be?
Yeah, the region itself, as you know, has produced its own economic strategy or growth plan and sets out the areas of capability and strength within that, and that has followed through the selection of their project. Of course, Johnny, be aware from Mid-South-West will be around advanced manufacturing, materials handling in terms of moving forward, and the projects then that they have identified will follow through in that, and therefore they have identified, as you're aware, around Desert Creek and the focus of industry that are around net zero and how they can decarbonise the manufacturing processes and industrial processes of the companies in that region. In the Fermanagh district, and Adrian and I have been working closely with both. We're looking again at and the construction industry and decarbonisation of concrete, etc., with Manic and other companies down there. How do we create the capability? Again, Jonathan, looking at your own constituency there, looking at Carn and how again back on the decarbonisation, how we move it forward, and that is all supported by an industrial challenge fund, which the region wants to take forward again to help and drive support for companies in that region to drive productivity, deliver against their net zero obligations and moving forward. So really it's around that the focus is around advanced manufacturing in terms of movement. That's what the deal has identified as a key strength in its area, and we have a project then that we are trying to bring through to fruition, and agri-food as well.
Yeah, no, look, it's a very diverse portfolio, but very exciting in terms of playing to each particular council area's strength, but also bringing out the richness of diversity in those regions significantly, that Fermanagh area, Mid-Ulster, and indeed Upper Bann. I would like to touch on a couple of points in relation to delays, and I totally agree with the sentiment from members. Delays mean money, more money that we don't have, and also it, delays build expectation. If inflationary costs keep going the way they are, the reality of deliveries becomes a real question mark for all of these projects. So looking at this particular and understanding that some of the projects in Mid-Southwest are at different stages and different phases, some are much more complex. And I would really press on you this morning, and you'll know where I'm going with this, that surely we can look at a phased approach to the delivery of this city deal, because in doing so, we ensure that we get timely delivery. We also ensure that we don't go into excess costs, and we actually start to see the benefits of some of this going forward. So I would like to hear your response to that. I don't think it is a good idea that we wait for all of the business cases to be finalized before we proceed. I do believe that a phased approach in an area like that will deliver much more timely, cost-effective projects for the betterment of that entire region.
And you'll not be surprised, I've heard that view expressed by colleagues in your constituency, so it's nothing new. And the reality, Jonathan, is that the department works within a governance structure that was agreed by the executive and agreed by UK government, and the challenge has been, and that governance structure sets out that to move forward, the majority of all the projects have to be approved moving forward. It's DOF will make that decision with UK government. I totally empathise where we are. Our focus now, if you look at the Mid-Southwest deal, John, the challenge we have there is bringing forward an innovation programme, which is UK government funding. Again, coming back, I think Gary asked earlier what the difference has been in terms of moving forward. My team, myself, Adrian and colleagues have been working directly with the councils, both from Annanoma and directly with Mid-Ulster, to support them bring forward at pace a programme business case that can enjoy the support of UK government and indeed the department, and allow then, Jonathan, the deal to be unlocked. The heads of terms be signed in progress, because I am conscious that the APIC and RAPIC centres, they have been approved at SOC. We need to move forward. Time is money. But is there the ability or the desire? Because obviously I know the minister may have an interest in this particular region as well, given he represents it on an MLA capacity. But has there been a desire or an approach by the department to say, look, can we look into whether or not things can be amended and changed to allow phased approach? Because I would imagine from a DOF perspective, and even from a central government perspective, they're very live to the issue of spiralling inflation costs. So if something could be done, I suppose I don't want us to adopt an approach to say, no, this can't be done, it's in black and white, we move on. I would prefer us to adopt an approach to say, well, look, can we explore this with central government? Can we explore this with DOF and try to ensure that we can get some of this off the ground, rather than waiting for what we know will be inflationary pressures? I'm happy to bring that back. We sit on the Northern Ireland City Growth Deals board, and I'm happy to bring that back. I think the point, John, and really again comes back to this investment by promoters, which is a challenge, I know, is that we are at SOC stage now, so funding doesn't get released until outline business case. So if you think of the projects in your constituency, if you're looking at APIC, the agri innovation, agri-bio innovation, or indeed RAPIC with CAFRE, there will be a cost, resource pressure on those organisations to develop the outline business case, that funding. Now we are looking at ways, again, coming back to the point, how can we in central government, we want these projects to proceed because we've approved the SOCs, we think they're a good thing to do. How can we support them in developing those outline business cases? And that's something, a practical measure I'd like to look at.
It's just we're going to have extra costs with refreshing of business cases, which is totally it's not practical, nor is it prudent for us to go down that way. So look, I welcome your commitment to take that back to the board, and I would appreciate if you could update via the committee what the outcome of those discussions are, because it's something I think we really need to push at this stage, and that's not just in reference to Mid-Southwest. I think that's an approach that should be looked at across the board. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, panel.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for your presentation. Obviously, the Belfast City deal and the Northwest City deal were a result of our party's confidence and supply agreement with the UK government. So, warmly welcome that. As a as a North Belfast representative, £230 million of projects in my constituency. The Amex site at the Newton Abbey end, the Studio Ulster in the heart of Lower North Belfast, and Belfast Stories at the city end of the constituency are to be welcomed massively. But I just want to pick up on how we ensure that those projects actually benefit the constituencies and the communities in which they are based. It's great to have them in the constituency, but I want to see that wealth spread throughout the constituency, that the jobs created are filled by those who live in the constituencies, and the local businesses within those communities benefit from those projects. So I just wanted to check what work the department has done to ensure that local communities and local suppliers actually benefit from this investment.
Yes, Philip, it's absolutely critical, and again, you'll be aware of the Belfast Region City deal. It is about inclusive growth, and the deal is about it, so we are very mindful, and so are project promoters. So, and I think some good work is already being undertaken by those you mentioned, Studio Ulster by the university, and Amy again in Queens, who are already doing that outreach work in terms of engaging with local communities, engaging with schools. There are a number of programs already underway to do that, to try and educate, inform is probably the best way of describing it, young people and the opportunities, and indeed of all ages, the opportunities that are through. How again do we work with the local colleges to get that supply side? So it is a programme of work on the skills agenda that is being taken forward. I think that the reality will be is that these centres themselves will not be massive employers. I think again, managing expectations. These are relatively small. The benefit is on the knowledge that they impart and share and diffuse to the wider business base, with the hope that it drives productivity and hopefully growth, and creates the jobs, creates apprenticeships in the key areas such as audiovisual and AV, and that work is being undertaken by the university. Again, that's back to the point I was making earlier about the alignment piece. How do we ensure, what are the regional strengths, how do we ensure that we can move these projects forward and help mobilise them, and the only way these projects will be successful if industry use them in the innovation side.
Yeah, no, it is vital that any of these projects are part of the community and not apart from the community. I just want to pick up on a couple of points that Mr. Honeyford raised importantly, and that was just in relation to this holistic approach. So, listen, Kieran, I understand you saying when David raises that's not within my remit, that's someone else's remit, but we need to have a much more holistic approach across government departments and the executive on these projects. This is over £1 billion of investment across Northern Ireland. It's the single biggest investment that we're going to see in some considerable time. And we need a holistic approach in which this committee and colleagues can engage extensively with. And I understand that each department has their own lead project in silo, but is there an overall project board in which we can speak to say, how does this project fit with that? How does that project fit with that? Because this department or this committee probably has the most interest of any in terms of the outworkings of city deals, but obviously we can't get or question updates in relation to something that DFI may be the lead partner on, or something that DFC needs a lead partner on. What is the overall strategic accountable board, and how are they reporting in, and who are they reporting into?
So there is a Northern Ireland City and Growth Deal Programme Board.
Okay.
I said it's chaired by Department of Finance and the NIO. The Department of Finance is the SRO for the overall programme, and so accountability for and decisions around. So that heads of terms this morning.
Yeah.
But the causeway would have been driven by, in the first instance, Department of Finance. So they lead on this. This is the governance structure that's been set out. It's not like some people compare it to Scotland. It's not like Scotland, where you have a single, as you're well aware, you have a single department. You don't have this separate accountability. That's the structure that was created. DFE is responsible for the projects that we have legislative remit for. But there is alignment, in fairness to the deals, when they were thinking these projects. So IMIC does link to GII.
Yeah.
Does link this, there are linkages through. The challenge we then at a programme board, how does AMIC then reach out into Mid-South-West? How does it reach up to Cadrick and Derry? That's the big.
Who chairs the board on behalf of the DOF?
Joanne McBurney chairs the board on DOF, and Kieran Hayes chairs from NIO, chairs the thing, and Neil Gibson is the SRO for the overall programme.
It's nice sit on the finance committee, and you know the next few number of weeks from that committee are going to be taken up by the budget process. So maybe it's a discussion that we can have after this in terms of how we might try and insert ourselves into that. Just in terms of the Minister's economic vision, then how do you believe the City Deal projects in which your department are responsible for fit or don't fit with the Minister's stated objectives?
Fundamental. They're absolutely fundamental, delivering his 4 priorities, and I mentioned, so better jobs. That's what these innovation projects are about.
How are you defining a better job, Kieran?
And that's the discussion about what, you know, the debate will continue about how and how that is defined. In terms of us, we have identified for our individual projects improvements in GVA. So, in advanced manufacturing, come back to one of your constituents, Amic, introducing robotics. So once you understand the industrial process, you introduce robotics, well that needs some sort of software engineer, data analytics, a better skill type then to understand the data it's producing and testing, etc. So those are the type of better jobs that we want to see coming out of that, and they're the benefits that are captured in individual projects. In terms of net zero, I mentioned the stuff that I think there's great opportunities around. Again, I look at AMIC, I look at RAPIC and APIC and various other projects about how they will deliver both in the bill, but primarily in the operation.
I will just wait the work on the City Deal project first.
Might be here away.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a long program. So it.
Downstairs, is it? No.
Sorry about that. Apologies.
So net zero, obviously then in some of the projects that we are looking at in the high tech, again I foresee in Ballymena, and again in Mid-South West we are looking at Carn Industrial and APIC and RAPIC in terms of the processes. Again, in regional balance is critical.
Yeah.
If we look at the investment, so you have £250 million of investment going into the Mid-South West region, in the Causeway Coast and Causeway region this morning, that's additional funding and that would not otherwise have gone into those regions in the absence of this programme, and that fits on regional balance. And again in Derry, you know, if you look at the £250 million or 200 million that's coming from UK government and the executive, on top of that then the investment from the council and other partners coming through, you know, that's leveraging that additional funding that I hope then will create the infrastructure that, and we're already seeing the evidence of that, Philip, in terms of real that if you, in your own constituency again, let's deal in North Belfast, CDHT has attracted, I think it's at 40 million in terms of the postdoctoral training centre. Yeah. Now, and it's in it was the thing, but it was an important part of the package that helped Ulster secure that training through. Ulster University again on Studio Ulster have secured funding from UK government, again because of the scale of investment we've done before. Queen's again and APIC have secured an Innovate UK fund for the mobility. So these things are starting to create a presence for Northern Ireland on the R&D stage at a UK, and indeed, and we'll hopefully see soon on the all-island basis in terms of shared island funding. And again, back in, and my previous life was involved in Horizon 2020, the opportunities to play into that wider European agenda for research funding. You need to be playing at scale to be part of a collaborative R&D team, and this infrastructure will provide that. So absolutely, it's City and Growth, and the Minister said this is critical delivery of
And
this.
Kieran, did I hear earlier, are you leading on sub-regional economic
Yeah.
plan? So you've got a small workload then at the minute. Maybe if you could give us the committee a bit of detail on where that currently sits and what the envisaged work.
Due to brief the committee so shortly, but you know,
no, listen, that's fine.
I'm happy to give you.
No. Listen, we can come back at a future point in relation to that. But obviously, with all these moving parts, City Deal, sub-regional economic plans, economic vision, and shared island funding. We have new UK government funding announced. It's just we need to make sure that these are all used in a strategic and overall way, and they complement each other. So I'm sure the committee will look forward to hearing from that. Mike, do you have anything you want to raise on City Deals? I know you had another engagement just before, but
yeah, I was at the doctor's.
Yes.
Interesting reception, sure.
Should I looked after you, Mike?
Just in terms of this definition of what a good job is, which I think is a debate we really need to have. If you look at some of these projects, like AMIC, iReach, Studio Ulster, there are potentially very exciting jobs in there. But these centres are still going to need cleaners, they're still going to need plumbers and electricians when things go wrong. How do you define a good job without disrespecting those other positions?
Disrespecting other positions. I'm not sure I follow. I know what you're getting at, but
Let's say I'm
Yeah.
a cleaner,
yeah.
and I listen to all this debate about good jobs, and I'm not included. But I take great pride
Yeah.
in my job, and I feel I should be valued for the job I do, because if I don't do it, Studio Ulster maybe can't operate today.
No, absolutely. And I think this is the JFK where I get NASA point to the cleaner and sort of say, "What do you do here?" And he says, "I put it on the moon." You know, that's that sort of analogy I think you're drawing upon. The challenge I'm making for us in terms of when we're looking at these individual projects, we see the opportunities they create and the better type of jobs and that upskilling. So we have a skill strategy that says we need to have more people, and let's go back to manufacturing again. Level 3, 4, 5. We need to move them up that value chain, and these jobs are the type of, or these centres are the type of centres that provide the knowledge for companies to be able to do that. How that fits into those who are then involved in the supply side or wherever else, we hope that will create, and I don't know where cleaning is going in the future in terms of automation and robotics, but I know if we go up to in Sinead's up in there, ISRC, some fantastic work going on in robotics there. I don't know what the future is there, and that debate about where AI comes in and where real, it's a massive debate. I'm in delivery. I'm in charge of a programme in DFA, and I'm focused on delivering. I'm confident that the projects that we are approving through on that innovation digital space will create better jobs, and that the evidence, we are forecasting that benefit will drive greater benefit and productivity in the Northern Ireland economy.
And I accept we've got to do all those things, and I would like us to be a world leader in developing all that. I just don't want anybody left behind or feeling left behind.
And in fairness, going to be, we know on the supply side, and again the previous leg about neurolinguistic and the AI and cognitive analytics, the traditional route of coming through university is not the solution to all our supply side. So if you go to Baltimore, I was fortunate enough to be there for a while, and looking at how they neurolinguistic they bring in from alternative supply side into that there, that might be new opportunities for people who traditionally may have not felt they would have had an opportunity. And I give credit to the universities and indeed the councils and looking how do they do their outreach, how do they do that social value, how do they make sure that those institutions create and add value to the society in which they're based. And they are doing that, and that's the benefits realisation plans that will come out of each of these projects.
Thank you. My frustration, Kieran, is just that 10 weeks ago the Minister announced a key pillar of his work was to create better jobs. I've asked many officials in your position in the past 10 weeks, what does that mean? And every single one of you have either given a different answer or say we're working on it. And listen, I understand there's priorities within the department, but if the Minister's going to announce that this is his key economic vision and can't define what he means by it, fluffy words aren't going to be what's going to change things. We need a clear definition if that's what we're all going to work to, because we all around this table want to support the Minister in delivering what I believe is his vision, but he just needs to articulate it and allow officials to articulate it to this committee. With that, can I thank you very much for your representations. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that the committee will look forward to working with you, and I'm sure that Sinead will set the deadline within the work of the committee for June to look forward to another update. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for that new job.
No, yeah.
Better job.
Peter. So, Chairperson, is the committee then content to, excuse me, write to the Department of Finance as it is in the lead, just asking them several things about the project governance. So if I've understood correctly, it is Prince 2. So there should be PIDs, project initiation documents, risk registers, and a project plan. So all those things should, as well as project initiation documents, there'll also be a programme plan. So you've got lots and lots of projects happening in Belfast, happening in the Northwest, etc. But overall there's a programme. And there's lots and lots of money, lots and lots of players. So there should be a programme plan. And if the committee might want to see said plan. So, because if you look on the website for the Belfast deal, look at some of those projects, Belfast Stories and the others, there's their dates. You can actually see when, well, they're high level dates, but they're saying when they think they're going to happen. So hopefully there's an overall programme plan, and just for the committee to assure itself that there is No reason to suppose that there isn't, but just to ask if there is Prince 2 methodology, which is the standard methodology for these kind of big government projects, about this. So additionally, to ask the Department of Finance actually how it's ensuring that there is project complementarity and the projects don't contradict each other. Also asking about jobs per deal and jobs per project, because this number of 6,000 has come from somewhere, so members can track that. And then perhaps, if the committee is agreeable, asking the Department of Finance to consider the question of phasing so as to maximise funds and to offset the problems with inflation. And I think Mr. Delardy has something to add.
Yeah. Padre.
Yeah, no, just it's just in the back of Sinead's point. I think that's really good too, to kind of get that breakdown of exactly where the jobs are going. Just within that as well, are we asking for sector breakdown as well as location?
Where it is?
Where it is. Yeah. I think where it is, what the job is, and just as much detail as we can. I think the more kind of indices that we can run that by, the better, to be honest. So.
Anything else, Chairperson, members?
No, it's just a point that I know that ultimately the overall board is responsible to DOF, but the Finance Committee for weeks now will be focusing on the budget and other pressures. And listen, I know we can't change the governance structure within that, and that Joanne is chairing that, but I'm just not certain that they have the bandwidth within the Department for Finance to give it the focus at the minute that it needs. But it is what it is. Okay, members, we're now going to move on to receive a briefing from Chris. Chris, good to have you back.
Thank you. Committee Room 30, sound. Committee Room 30, sound.
We're open.
Yep, thank you. The committee will now receive an oral and written brief from representatives of the Northern Ireland Council for Voluntary Action on the economic impact of the loss of third sector services following the withdrawal of EU funding. I wish to refer members to the clerk's covering note at page 160 and refer to the paper that NICVA has provided to the committee at page 164. NICVA's 2023 submission to the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee at page 170, and the 2024 NI Select Committee report on the delivery of Northern Ireland public services. Ladies, you are all very, very welcome here to the committee. We have with us Celine McStravick, CEO of NICVA, Ruth Copper, Senior Head of Partnership NI Princess Trust, Paula Jennings, CEO at Stepping Stones, and Anne McVicker, the Director of Women's Resource and Development Agency. You're all very welcome before the committee here this afternoon, and I'm very happy to hand over to you, Celine.
Thank you very much, Chair. Delighted to be here today to attend your committee meeting and introduce myself as Chief Executive of NICVA. I suppose just to start by saying we're delighted to have the Northern Ireland Assembly back and working, and the voluntary and community sector really looked forward to this time when we can work closer with MLAs to make decisions that matter. In particular, we wanted to draw your attention for this meeting to I suppose what's happening under economic inactivity. There's so much our sector do to improve the economy and to support your kind of strategic aims, but we have a few specific asks for you today, given the current cliff edge that we're looking at for March 2025. So just by way of background, you'll be aware that European Social Fund left Northern Ireland some time ago. It feels longer than it is. And it was in theory replaced, but not in practice, by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. And in particular, for economic inactivity, there was £57 million invested to support people across Northern Ireland into sustainable employment. We're really concerned about the uncertain future of UK Shared Prosperity, and we're really concerned because we've been here, done this. This is not new to us to be waiting in this position. At the minute, there are over 100 organisations delivering programmes under UK Shared Prosperity, and that's supporting over 26,000 people. But you'll see what I've brought with us today is some examples of the organisations, because of course we work across women, people with long-term disability, young people, ex-prisoners, the most vulnerable in society, to support them back into employment. So you'll not want to hear from me much longer. I'm going to hand over to my colleagues, and I've asked them just to give you a few minutes, bit of a flavour on the project, people they're working with, so you have more information, and then I'll come back for some specific asks. So over to you, Paula.
Hi, thank you, Celine. I'm Paula Jennings, the Chief Officer of Stepping Stones NI, and I'm also delighted to come to your committee meeting today to give you an update and a flavour of what we do within Stepping Stones, but also as a partner in the UK Share Prosperity Consortium Prosper. Stepping Stones is an organisation that aims to advance the skills, the employability and the overall social inclusion of people with disabilities and autism and barriers to learning with physical sites in Lisburn and in Ards. We've worked for 25 years to advance the skills and the employability of people so that they can be supported into jobs, realising their full potential. Stepping Stones also, as a partner in the UK Share Prosperity Fund, we are there with Triangle Housing Association, the Appleby Trust, AEL in Larne and CAN up in Ballymoney. We work together across 9 council areas on SPF to reduce the economic inactivity that supports people with a disability and health conditions through skills development towards employment and real jobs. Through our Prosper Consortium, we aim to support people with a disability and those who are economically inactive to increase their employability skills to get and keep a job. As a consortium over the last 2 years on SPF, we have had a target to work with approximately 700 people, 1,700 people who are economically inactive, with securing 404 jobs for people during the programme. In our first year of UK Share Prosperity Fund, as a consortium, we've supported over 850 people, and 210 people have gained employment as the result of the consortium and the funding. Last year, as an organisation, Stepping Stones also supported 140 people into jobs, changing the lives of those people towards a better future. We support people moving into the labour market, working towards good jobs with good employers and overall increasing the diversity and inclusion in the workforce and our communities. We as a sector and as a consortium, as an individual organisation, collaborate with a range of employers in Northern Ireland like Henderson's, Wincanton, EE, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, to name but a few, to secure those real jobs for our people. We have, over the last year and kind of on the transition from European Social Fund, we have delivered a range of what we call our Step Into Academies. And we've worked in particular with employers like Henderson's Food Service as one example where we have made a huge impact. Stepping Stones worked with Henderson's Food Service to support these people into jobs aligned to their new store openings, particularly coming out of COVID. And we delivered Step Into Retail and Deli Academies to guarantee those jobs. Through this partnership, Stepping Stones has supported 28 people into new jobs working in customer service and deli within their new business. These academies are short, employer-focused interventions with accredited training and a guaranteed interview designed to ensure that people get jobs. Together with our industry partners, we remove the barriers to employment, offering lasting employment opportunities, both as an organisation, a sector and as a consortium. So as Celine says, what is the future of people with disabilities in Northern Ireland? Well, our future is uncertain post March next year. With no continuing funding beyond SPF, we may face another cliff edge, which will have a huge impact to continuation of services that support the specialist employability services in our sector, in our Prosper Consortium and as an organisation, to deliver disability employment services to those who need it the most. Without the continuation of funding, there will be no quality service provision that supports people with disability and no pre-employment support. Organisations that have worked for over 30 years to support people with disabilities and those who are economically inactive to increase their skills, their employability will not be able to continue their vital work. We cannot go back to a model where people with disabilities and those with barriers to employment, barriers to learning, do not have the pre-employment support to achieve a job. Our sector offers this vital service. Future funding post-March 2025 is essential for our work in our disability sector to continue. We are focused on jobs, skills development, and overall working together with employers to be the recruitment solution for them, whilst at the same time increasing the diversity and inclusion of the workforce. Employing people with a disability is good for business, it's good for the person employed, it's good for their family, and overall it's good for Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Nice. Did you want to?
Thank you, super, thanks. My name's Ruth Cooper and thank you for having us here. I'm here to represent Youth Start. Youth Start is a consortium of 7 leading Northern Irish charities: Youth Action, Springboard Opportunities, the Prince's Trust Northern Ireland, Include Youth, Start 360, the Northern Ireland Youth Forum and the BITES Project. Youth Start is a youth employability initiative aimed at building young people's skills for life, learning and work, which will support over 2,200 young people aged 16 to 30 in the 2-year period of SPF. These are young people who are economically inactive and often furthest from the labour market. Youth Start provides support to help them build confidence, employability skills and life skills. It helps connect economically inactive young people with opportunities to enter and sustain employment, and we do that by working with many partners, including local and national employers here in Northern Ireland. The consortium work with young people across all 11 council areas in Northern Ireland, responding to both localised need and tackling high levels of economic inactivity across the province. The work also delivers strongly in Northern Ireland's draft programme for government, delivering across all 9 strategic outcome areas. It supports the skills strategy for Northern Ireland and actions within the delivery plan in supporting economically inactive beneficiaries who would like to work if the circumstances were right, addressing challenges related to their long-term health issues, caring responsibilities and generation unemployment. This work also addresses inequality findings within the skills barometer for Northern Ireland, helping those beneficiaries with low or no qualifications on pathways to further learning and qualification. This work also delivers significantly on cross-departmental strategy for 14 to 19-year-olds, helping connect and in some cases re-engage young people with education and training to support them to fulfil their potential. The third sector has proven efficacy in this. In terms of our performance to date, so I'd outlined we hope to support over 2,200 young people who are economically inactive across the 2-year period. We're making really good progress. We've already supported over 1,300 young people in the first year, moving 183 into employment and a further 536 into further education and training. The challenges and complexities the young people we support have increased significantly in recent years and are very much compounded by recent cost of living crisis, changing economic landscape and long-term scarring effects following disrupted formal education and learning and periods of lockdown related to the pandemic and indeed job instability and job loss. Our consortium has proven success in engaging the most difficult to reach beneficiaries from all communities across the province. Every young person we support is different and the support that they receive is tailored to their needs. Our specialist youth workers and services help them overcome complex and often concurrent challenges in their lives relating to disadvantage, deprivation, educational underachievement, disability and mental ill health, carer experience, homelessness, involvement within criminal justice system, addiction, domestic violence and abuse. We use a youth work approach which is tailored to the individual to support a journey, and this journey helps address challenges to stabilise their lives and provide support and encouragement, which includes mentoring and specialist provision, including in-house counselling services for those that need it. Our consortium, to give you a few examples of young people we've helped, our consortium helped a 21-year-old young woman from Newry who dropped out for a training course during lockdown. She developed crippling anxiety and depression, which led to her hospitalisation for this. She also got into debt, which added to her anxiety. Youth Start were able to engage with her and connect, to provide support and develop a personal plan with achievable goals, both short and long term. So firstly, we focused on her life skills and mental well-being. And then when the timing was right and she was ready for the next step, we helped her employability skills development through job search, application support, interview preparation. She went on to, we also provided practical support with transportation and then mentoring that she accessed as well. She went on to successfully secure employment within the retail sector, a job that she loves and where she's made friends and connected to people. We helped her develop a debt plan, and her hopes for the future are that she progresses within retail to a supervisor role. Another beneficiary that we supported struggled in school, leaving with minimal GCSEs. His home life, he experienced family problems which led to social services involvement. Through this, he was referred to Youth Start, which initially, whilst he was sceptical about and battling ongoing stresses within his family and housing situation, he realised that the informal and supportive services and peer connection were benefiting him greatly. In his words, "This has definitely been a lifesaver because the road I was walking down was quite dark." As his journey progressed, he became ready for the next step, and he progressed into an employability initiative with one of our employer partners in the banking industry. Having completed this and found a new focus in his life, he went on to secure employment with NatWest, where he continues to hold this position. Whilst we are pleased with the progress of Youth Start to date and what has been achieved through the Shared Prosperity Fund, as Paula has referred to, we're extremely concerned about the cliff edge in funding for provision of this kind beyond March 2025. There's no current clarity on potential continuation of UK SPF or establishment of a comparable successor fund in Northern Ireland. This puts at risk continued provision for some of the most vulnerable young people and groups across the province. Current providers do not have any other means of sustaining provision, even in the short term, once current SPF grants end. Societal need for provision for those that are economically inactive is persistent in Northern Ireland, but the uncertainty of continued funding less than a year from now means that providers are faced with short and long-term viability issues which are intrinsic within the third sector, a sector which has proven efficacy at delivering results for the most disadvantaged and vulnerable groups, many of whom other organisations and sectors have failed to engage. At organisational level, across our 7 Youth Start providers, there are over 107 project workers, either majority part-funded or fully funded through UK Shared Prosperity Fund. From this autumn, providers in our consortium and most likely across other projects will have to begin to consider their immediate and long-term viability. Organisations have no means of sustaining this work, and circumstances such as loss of funding will lead to the irreversible loss of expertise and likely widespread collapse of Northern Ireland's third sector, a sector which cannot easily be re-established or replicated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, my name's Anne McVicker, the Director of Women's Resource and Development Agency, and our project is called Women Breaking Barriers. There are a number of other partners, NIRWIN, Northern Ireland Rural Women's Network, Women's Support Network and Reclaim the Agenda, along with our delivery partners, and they are Falls, Footprints, Greenway, Ballybean, Windsor, Shankill and Atlas Women's Centres. We have just completed our first year, and some of the headliners are: we had 469 registered women on the project, and that's against a target of 300, and we have 412 actively participating in activities. And we're certainly on target for achieving the majority of our outputs and our outcomes. And just to note as well that 295 of those women have received support to reduce structural inequalities such as transport, access arrangements, childcare, dependent care and personal circumstances. We have had a very good geographical spread across all 11 local authorities. Of the 469 women registered on the programme, approximately 50% of those women identified as having either a disability or a health problem. 47% had caring responsibilities for one or more children under 16, and a further 15% had caring responsibilities for an elderly relative. In terms of equal opportunities,
26% of the women on the programme are from ethnic minorities. 14% have recorded sexual orientation as LGBT. And also, our data shows that that the programme is certainly open to and welcome to BME women and culturally diverse women. So some of the programmes that and the training that has been offered includes World Host, Goals Motivational Programme. There's counselling. There is level 2 in accounts, SAGE, etc. We've also had a whole range of job search and enrichment activities, inspiring women talks, job search, CV writing workshops, job fairs, employer insight events, and one-to-one career and life coaching. We ran 2 events so far this year. One of them was just before Easter, and it was connecting women to the film industry. Because there are so many, there's no direct route into the film industry, and there's so many jobs and opportunities within that, and that was an excellent event, and over 80 women attended. We've also entered into a partnership with the hospitality and tourism sector, HATS, and developed a bespoke programme to prepare unemployed women to secure employment opportunities in hospitality and tourism, and to prepare the workplace to be more inclusive in their practices to sustain the attraction, retention and progression of women in the sector. And our rural team also organised a very successful project with Marks and Spencers in March, highlighting the variety of employment opportunities available across all areas of the business and the flexible employment opportunities which are available for women, particularly those with caring responsibilities. And again, it was really well attended. It's important to say that securing this funding was really a lifeline, and it just can't be underestimated. Because given the lay of the land just last year, with budget cuts and rising cost of living, this was a major investment that was made to the 7 women's centres in terms of salary, a contribution towards salary costs, and the fact that all training costs were provided. We also have 3 full-time staff in Norwin, because Norwin works quite different from urban, in that they don't have women's centres. So basically, it's a number of sort of like rural women's groups. So really, just to finish off and say that it's not viable for individual sort of like groups to apply for funding like ESF when it was there, or this type of funding, because of a lack of capacity, and also maybe they won't have the reserves to make that possible. So we really need a transition year, and for this funding to be sustained going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, can I finish just with a few asks? So what you've heard obviously is a good news story regarding collaboration across Northern Ireland, skills development, impact and clear contribution to a thriving economy, a clear connection between improving our economic inactivity figures. And we've all said we need the extra money, but I suppose what we'd ask the committee in front of us today is to call on the Minister for the Economy and the Minister for the Communities and Minister of Finance to come together. At the moment, we're in a really strange position. We have the Department for Economy talking about the things we're talking about, but yet we have labour market partnerships and other initiatives happening in the Department for Communities. So we're falling between 2 ministerial portfolios. We also have the Minister of Finance saying there's no money in the budget. And as well as that, we have the Department for Levelling Up, where the money is coming from in the Treasury. It comes directly into Northern Ireland. And everyone knows we're looking at a general election over the next few months or so. And we are absolutely desperately afraid that we will be caught in the middle of that, with the new government coming in with no decision having been made. And the people who will suffer are the people with long-term disabilities, women, the young people, ex-prisoners, etc. Yet again, they'll be the ones most hit. So this is our time for action. We also are inviting all members to an event on the 12th of June in the Stormont Hotel, where we're talking about building an inclusive labour market and the role of the voluntary and community sector to make it really clear that our sector are absolutely part of the solution. We want to be part of the policy development, but we can't do that when we're looking at this cliff edge yet again. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Celine. Mike. Yeah, thank you all very much indeed. Just with regard to the discussion that we were having earlier on, which we've had many times about good jobs, I think, Ruth, you gave us a couple of examples of really, really good jobs, and I have a fear they will not be trapped when the department finally gives us, if they do, a definition of... Anyway, I'm going to try for 3 different questions, which may engage the wrath of the chair. But first of all, in terms of the loss of the European Social Fund, I mean, I went to some events which Andrew Irvine chaired on behalf of the peer group, warning of the dangers. And some voluntary and sector group organisations, chairs, said that it was so bad because these people are so vulnerable that lives could be lost. So I'm wondering, is it possible to objectively measure the impact of the failure of the Shared Prosperity Fund to adequately replace the ESF? Second, again, is it possible to measure the impact of the lack of affordable, accessible childcare on economic inactivity? And Anne, one for you as the WRDA. There was a little exchange on the floor of the Assembly the other day, which gave me hope to think that gender budgeting is now on the agenda within the Department of Finance. So could you tell us what the potential positive impact of that might be on the programme for government and the associated budget?
Can we take the first one, Chair, about the comparison between ESF and UK Shared Prosperity? We know for a fact that we're at least £20 million reduced from ESF, but actually the impact goes further than that. If you consider that ESF also had match funding from government department, that meant that it was inherently linked to government policy. It meant that government officials were really well aware of the projects and understood the impact. At the minute, not only is there a financial impact, but there is also a structural impact. We have UK Shared Prosperity at the minute. You can hear the excellent examples here. This is just a selection. But you do have a disconnect then with government departments, which we're really trying hard to kind of build those relationships back again. In terms of the impact on individuals, Mike, I think the point is well made, and Andrew would have been with us today, and he's on holiday, that at that stage, we were looking into a really blank hole in terms of funding. We could see individuals who were going to really have nowhere to turn. When UK Shared Prosperity came in, I think what made me most proud of our sector and being the representative body was the reaction of our sector. We didn't stop and say that's not enough. We said, what can we do with this money to make the best of it? And actually, what's really fantastic to see is a number of collaborative efforts right across Northern Ireland. And again, I would hate to lose that, because our organisations, when they work in collaboration, add even more value in terms of output and impact. So we're hoping that between the kind of one funding stopping and another one started, our sector really rose to the challenge, Mike. We don't want to talk about the kind of the bad news and what it could have looked like. We're looking to the future, but the problem is when we look to the future, we're afraid that we're going to get history repeating itself. And I can tell you now, and I sit on the UK Shared Prosperity Board in Northern Ireland. I've been really clear with officials from the Department for Levelling Up as well. Our sector can't do it again. We lost jobs in our sector, we lost expertise, we lost goodwill with families. We had families with learning disability, etc. at the end on the news, that we would never want to use those types of methods again. Don't want to go there. So we're starting really early. We're saying we need a decision by June. It has to be June, because we're looking at a general election in the autumn. If it's not June, we're going to be back to square one again next year. So, does that answer a bit?
Yeah. And on the childcare,
yes.
lack of accessible, affordable?
I think there's absolutely, it's well versed about that connection between affordable childcare and economic inactivity, and in fact Anne's probably even better placed to speak to this than me, working with women in particular, and that's often a barrier to entering the labour market. So a childcare strategy, and it's in our briefing as well, it's not even a nice to have at the minute, it's absolutely essential. And when you look at where we are across the UK, comparing what other governments are doing with childcare, we are so far behind.
And gender budgeting?
Well, gender budgeting is about making decisions in terms of the budget based on the need and the impact that can make. So if we take childcare as an example, so if the funding, and there is a major investment that is needed in order to have accessible and affordable childcare for all, and if that is made, the impact of that would be that more women would be able to return to the workplace, and in turn, if you have more people who are working, there's more than return in terms of like tax and all the rest of it that's come back into the economy. And for the life of me, I cannot understand how people cannot see that childcare is not just needed socially, but it's an economic factor, and that major investment needs to be made. There is a lot of talk about the 30 hours that we don't get here, and that would be great if we got it. However, childcare provision infrastructure is so below par that there needs to be that major investment in terms of childcare infrastructure, both in terms of capital, in terms of like premises and that, but also there needs to be a major investment as well in childcare workers.
Sure. I just think we need to start disaggregating as a first step. Disaggregate the spend by departmental budgets to understand the impact on gender. But I'll leave it at that, Chair. Thank you very much. I just say I admire what you all do collectively, and without you, there'd be less hope, and we need a lot of hope.
Let's climb onto that.
Audric. Thank you, and thank you all for your presentations as well. I suppose, Paul, of the groups that you've mentioned, in my former role as disability spokesperson, I would be most familiar with. And I think, Ruth, the example that you touched on in the word was personal. And to me, that's the difference. Because we're all, I suppose, particularly at this committee, vary across the fact that, we see the stats, we see the numbers, but it's about the personal experience. It's about the difference that this makes to ordinary people and to their lives as well. So on that point, I'm kind of really keen to hear a wee bit more about some of those examples and some of the people that you're working with, because we're all very conscious, and going back to stats here, over 90% of our businesses locally are SMEs. So I appreciate, and you touched on a number of the examples there about the companies that you are working with as well. I'm just keen to hear from you, how do we get beyond just, or I suppose not just, but largely working with big companies, with those corporates that have, I suppose, more capacity to take people on, and actually into businesses and communities like hospitality that you've mentioned, and into those other businesses. How do we as an economy committee support those smaller businesses, and how does that kind of influence your work, I suppose, as well?
Can I say that from a disability perspective? We work with a range of employers, a range of businesses. The ones that I've mentioned are just, I suppose, some of the larger employers. But if you look at in the communities that we're delivering services in across, as an organisation and across a consortium, we're engaging with local people who live in the local community. So we have local partnerships with local businesses. And I suppose it's about increasing, the opportunities People with disabilities just want the same as you and I. Do you know, I've people, you know, some of our clients say, Paul, I just want you to get me a job, do you know, or some of the teams. So we have to, and I want to get my dream job, do you know, and for that, the dream job is individual to every single person and their needs. And it's with the support of organisations, our organisation and organisations that deliver services for people with disabilities, is to always push the door with larger companies and smaller ones in order to demonstrate that people with disabilities can add so much to the workforce in terms of their talents, their abilities, their skills, their qualifications, and that they can do the job. And from an employer's perspective, we're always advancing with disability awareness for employers to always focus on the disability or of the diversity and inclusion in the workplace. People with disabilities have so much to bring to society. They enhance the workplace. They're loyal. They have skills, and they can do the jobs sometimes better than everybody else. You know, for them, in lots of cases. So it's a range. We engage with everyone who can provide the support, not just for the person, but also who benefits, but also their families as well. Because when a person with a disability is working, you'll find then the other family members can go out to work as well.
Absolutely. And sorry.
I was going to offer an additional comment on it, and thank you for recognising the people at the centre, because it's quite difficult, especially, you know, on behalf of Youth Start. We're aiming to support over 2,200 young people over the 2-year period of SPF, but these are people, and every person is different, every journey is different, and our approach is very much person-centred. But ESF did have a wider remit than SPF's prime focus in Northern Ireland of economic inactivity. There were young people who were NEET and kind of other groups, but SPF is very much focused on job outcomes, and the reality is many of the young people that we engage are potentially on a journey where job employment is perhaps quite a distance away. So our partners within the consortium are working to take them on that journey, to stabilise life challenges where they exist, and particularly to support those most disadvantaged and vulnerable groups. But our approach is bespoke, and we're always working in the young people's interests. In terms of the provision, equally we would work with smaller employers, and whilst we do have rolling employability initiatives across the consortium and the partners within, you know, we will always find a solution and work one-to-one with employers. And pick up on Paula's point, there's a huge piece of advocacy in working with employers, large and small, to advocate on behalf of young people, to broker that support and ensure that there is that inclusion and perhaps adaptations as required to help move those that are economically inactive into outcomes such as employment. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, I was just going to say about in terms of the hospitality sector, and you know, like many years ago, you know, you could always get a job in a bar or in a restaurant and that, and you know, a lot of students would have been employed there. I suppose COVID changed everything, and now there is a shortage of staff, you know, in the hospitality and tourism sector, and it's not about the employers as well have to change, you know, because there was very much sort of like a flippant attitude in terms of, you know, like the conditions maybe weren't the best. There was maybe little flexibility, you know, because of split shifts and things like that. How does that all fit in, even sort of like trying to get more women employed in the sector? Also in terms of safety, you know, like coming home at night and, you know, getting transport and things like that. So the employers, you know, have to give consideration to this as well, and also sexual harassment, you know, in the sector. So part of our partnership with HATS is actually not only sort of like running a pilot in terms of a particular programme to get women into the sector, but also developing an employer toolkit. So because the culture needs to change within the sector, and what we're finding is that employers now seem to be at the stage where they're ready to embrace that.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to touch back on Celine, on your point as well, we concur with the asks that you've brought forward, totally recognising. And I think it's really imperative that we hear directly from yourselves today, because you are doing the work on the ground, you're supporting people and getting them to employment. So listen, thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Gary?
Thanks, Chair. And just to concur with other comments, we thank you for sharing your views and your positions with us, and we very much share, obviously, the concerns. When the Shared Prosperity Fund came out, obviously there was a lot of concerns around how it was structured, how it was managed and allocated, and we're well aware, obviously, of the frustrations around that. I take up on Ruth's point and others as well in terms of the relationships that are built up, and I declare an interest in that. My wife works for the learning and disability sector, so I know that a huge amount of effort goes in to build up relationships, and when that's lost, it takes a very long time, if ever, to actually rebuild that personal relationship with the individuals that you have been working on to obviously to get them into employment, but also to build life skills and that. In terms of job losses, obviously there's, given the shortfall in funding, obviously there have been job losses, but is there any estimation in terms of your members as to how many have actually left the sector for a more sustainable, when I say sustainable, I mean secure and job, if you like, or have they moved on to something that they can say, well, at least we know we're going to be funded beyond a year from now?
You're talking about a pattern across the sector, so it's not just connected with UK Shared Prosperity, of course. So across the voluntary community sector, we have huge concerns about job losses, and that's because we can't offer the same terms and conditions, same security, pension. So it's really hard to retain staff. But the staff we have, hugely talented and values based, and they'll try to stay as much as possible with our sector. NICVA have just concluded a piece of research on the workforce, and we've got some startling facts around percentages. 80% of organisations are saying they're really struggling to recruit at the moment. It's very difficult, and I think all of the press and media around ESF, although we needed it to get a decision made, it's also unhelpful because it doesn't really sell the sector very well. So again, you're making really tough decisions there. Our sector in particular, because we struggle with getting more than 1 year funding, etc. You'll all be very familiar with that we're really wanting to have multi-year funding and more sustainable options. And when you're listening to the kind of stories we've heard here, these aren't stories of small volunteer-run charities doing a bit. These are significant, huge collaborations with an investment of over £50 million in economic inactivity. So this is a kind of different approach to considering the voluntary community sector, that we aren't just discretionary, we're absolutely fundamental to making Northern Ireland work. And I think that's the message I would get across if I'm talking about people working in our sector.
Yeah, and recently the Minister for Communities had been down in the Foyle constituency, listening to the front line, as you've said, the frustrations around the pay and conditions. But when we talk about good jobs, people are there because they are jobs that are fulfilling, but they just need obviously the reassurance and the funding obviously to continue. In terms of the departmental relationships that what I hear has suffered in terms of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, how obviously you're working to try and improve those. We need the departments to be on board, and I think that the asks that you have put forward, I don't think anybody could disagree with them. In fact, we fully support them and no doubt discuss them again in the future. But how do you see those departmental relationships improving? What can we do in terms of access to money, people being heard, but also in terms of the UK government level? You had written off to Michael Gove and to Minister Angela Rayner as well. Has there been any fruit at all in terms of feedback?
At the moment, we're getting a very standard political line that you'll understand that, the Conservative government can't make a decision, next year, given what's coming up, etc. I'm a great believer in if we all kind of put our shoulders to the wheel and all came together, there must be a solution to this. I have to say, given our imminent budget coming out in Northern Ireland, I'll be really clear, open and frank about a concern that that money from the Treasury, the 50 odd million going into economic activity, may actually fall into a kind of Northern Ireland block. and we may lose it because it may not go directly to the voluntary and community sector. And as I say, this isn't just a plea for our sector, it's a plea for the people who are benefiting from the projects that we've already set up. It's a please let's not start with a blank sheet of paper, please let's build on our strengths. You know, I have to mention the labour market partnerships that have been developed with all local councils via the Department for Communities. And the voluntary community sector sit in all of those partnerships. So we're always really willing to be part of the solution. We want to be round the table. What we don't want, in our worst fear, is that it just becomes another call for funding, and kind of we're not being treated seriously as being key partners in economic activity.
David.
Yeah, thank you for coming in, and Paula for coming from Stepping Stones, which is fabulous. What happens and what you do. So thank you, all of you, for the service you do. We get invited to loads of stuff, and one of the nights I'll never forget was standing with a group of ladies actually in Atlas Women's Centre in Lisburn, and them telling their story, and it was actually couldn't speak. They asked us to address them, and I couldn't speak. It was the loss of funding and the loss of jobs and stuff around that it must have been May last, it must be a year ago. But one of the things, I sit in the PAC, and we've been looking at mental health, and demand is up, yet referrals to statutory services is actually fallen. And part of that, when I questioned that, part of that was because of your sector, and you're picking up the workload, and I suppose there's a fear of that gets taken kind of for granted, and then that leads you to the question: well, what does it cost to run? But what does it cost if we don't fund it? Is the other side, and the actually a bigger question: what is the cost to society here if we don't run? But everybody's kind of touched on stuff that was saying. But if we go to the dream bit, because I know you don't want to be seen as we're just calling for funding. But what's the perfect solution? If you were to go, what is the solution for our sector? You know, we've had ESF now, we've Sherwood Sperry. What is the ideal that you would want that can start to shape within departments? What does that look like? That makes sense.
I think in regard to economic inactivity, I'll talk about the dream in a minute, but you know, Anne has mentioned it. There's an immediate decision that we need. And so we need, I know the new government, Labour coming in, may not be able to make a decision very quickly, but we do need pressure for at least a transition fund for another year while the new UK government comes in. And then we want to be part of a co-design process. Then we want to get round the table and say, okay, we can maybe take a breath here, folks. We've learnt an awful lot. There's an ongoing evaluation of all of the projects in UK Share Prosperity. It is one of the things that is always so impressive, that when money comes to our sector, it is evaluated to the absolute nth degree, but you never have the time to look at that evaluation because you're running into the next funding call. So our dream would be to have a bit of time to sit and look at those evaluation results, but also to look at the other things happening in Northern Ireland, for example, labour market partnerships, Job Start, other programmes, and start to understand how they all fit together. And actually, who's best to deliver what we need to deliver? Okay, so because some organisation will say, well, actually, that's better in the public sector, that's better in the voluntary sector, it shouldn't be. And you know what? What we care about in our sector, or the people with long-term disabilities, the women, the youth, that's where we always go back to. We want to know who's best to deliver and who's closest to the ground. So our dream would be that there is a format, a discussion, a policy development where we feel part of, where you can say, right, this is not a big place, Northern Ireland, 1.9 million people, this can't be that hard to solve. And why can't we just do what works consistently without having our sector competing with within our own sector, whatever? Why can't we just put the people who are benefiting at the actual heart of the policy? That would be my dream.
Yeah, I love it. And that's, I suppose that comes back to what you just finished on. It's putting the people at the most vulnerable in our society, which have got to be are absolute priority in it. So thank you. Just I was taking the transition year as for granted in my question.
Don't take
but
anything for granted.
I know, I appreciate that. But just to finish, I'm just quite trying to help within that. Have you looked as a wider body at Shared Island and collaboration and partnership south as well as the Shared Prosperity? Is that sorry?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not yet. And just back to your earlier point, I think our event on the 12th of June in the Stormont Hotel, again, will showcase the work happening in our sector, but we want, MLAs there, we want policymakers there, we want local government there to see that actually we can see a shared solution to all of this, and then we'll look to the Shared Island. We'll get it sorted out here first.
Thank you. Sinead?
Okay. I just want to echo my congratulations to all of your members, Celine, and the work that they do in our communities, the valuable work, and they make the wheels go round for everybody else as well. So you kind of nearly answered my question and David's question. I think the UK Share Prosperity scheme is a botched scheme, and it has failed the collective of the community and voluntary sector. And I think obviously there's a gap in the funding, and so it wasn't match funding in any shape, form or fashion. It wasn't a replacement of what went before it, and then other government bodies and councils didn't have to actually come in and support the projects as they had. So a lot of organisations and public sector and departments got off the hook as well, and didn't have a responsibility to go in there. And I think the funding hasn't gone to the places necessarily where it was needed to go to. What is your opinion in the fact that the UK government are in charge of this funding and the distribution of this funding, and do you believe it would be better served in a devolved manner? And albeit that you have reflected that there are 3 departments there and there's a bit of silo working and there needs to be a better collective and better mapping, but fundamentally, if we don't get that first piece right, where the money is actually being developed and distributed by the departments that know their own communities. Like Derry was served really badly within the Shared Prosperity Fund, the most deprived area in the whole of Northern Ireland, and it was hit the worst. And then again, just about job losses, have you evaluated the number of job losses, and have you evaluated the projects that have lost funding, and is there a collective ask for those departments to make an evaluation of that and find another way of costing in supporting those organisations that lost the money?
I think that's a brilliant question, and thank you very much for raising that, because obviously we're here talking about UK Share Prosperity, but there's a significant number of projects in our sector and groups in our sector who did not benefit from that money and were left kind of very much out in the cold to go and find funding elsewhere. And I suppose that's back to the dream about our sector being round the table regarding policy development. So NICVA have brought together a coalition of organisations in this area, and some of them have got money and some of them haven't got money in UK Share Prosperity. And what we're saying is it's important not to ignore those organisations who weren't successful. That because, in your terminology, it wasn't perfect. I'll be a bit more diplomatic, it wasn't perfect. So lots of organisations were unable to achieve the criteria that was set. Personally, and I think when I talk to our members, our greatest fear would be that money would get lost in Northern Ireland if it goes directly into departments. If it was ring-fenced and there was a clear plan for how to distribute that, then I think that would be absolutely the better way to go. Local people know their issues more than anyone. People on the ground know the connections and they know what's working, and it's important to respect that. I think, the organisations that have got UK Share Prosperity have done the best to deliver and what they could. But as I say, I still remember seeing the kind of list of unsuccessful as well, and the people who couldn't even apply, etc. And it's important to make sure we think about that. So it's not perfect, it could be fixed, but what would be even worse if the tap just turned off altogether, it would be an absolute disaster if we didn't do something. Do we know enough about the job losses?
Yeah.
No, we don't, because our sector don't stop to take even a breath to think about that. But you're absolutely right, that is a task to reflect on and to make sure we have those statistics.
Can I just add to that? Talk about the organisations who have lost out. Some people have lost out in our communities, and I speak on behalf of the disability sector. We're focusing on those people who are nearest the labour market. When we were talking about UK Share Prosperity Fund, there's a population of people, particularly people with learning disabilities, who are furthest away from the labour market, that don't necessarily have the support under those programmes to achieve their goals of finding a job. Their learning disability in particular aren't suited towards labour market partnerships, although we have tried. There's a delivery of 2 labour market partnerships working in ABC and in Lisburn, but we can't lose sight of those people who need more intense support in order to get their dream job or to get their job in the future. There is value in that, and that can't be lost in our conversations when we're talking about pre-employment engagement. And it's so important for Northern Ireland for us to have a disability strategy. At the minute, that is a work in progress. And as a sector, disability sector, we'll be looking forward for that disability strategy to be rolled out, so that it encompasses for all people who have a disability, not just those who are nearest the labour market. And because it's very important for those who are furthest away that they have the same opportunity to advance in their skill and to progress into employment just as everybody else does. Do you know? So
Thank you.
I wonder, might I further add?
I'm not trying to cut anyone off. It's just I have an event to speak at 1:15, and I want to just make sure that all members have an opportunity to contribute. Phil?
And I also have to attend that event. So, I mean, by this stage, most of the issues I would have asked as a question have been raised. The loss of European funding has had a major impact on communities, organisations and individuals. You know, that goes without saying. I just did want to commend your organisations for the work that you do and show my own appreciation for that. I don't know all of the organisations, but I certainly am aware of someone, particularly Can in Ballymoney, which I visited on a number of occasions and appreciate the really good work that goes on there. My colleague has put in record her support for your ask, so I just wanted to put my own personal appreciation for the work that you do.
Can I add to those? I think I've worked with most of the organisations within your consortiums. Shankill Women's Centre, the force of nature that is Betty Carlisle. I bumped into her on a stag do recently in Benidorm, and she even raised it there with me. So Betty is raising these at all important times. Belfast works.
What's she doing on the stag?
She was having her own away day. Belfast Works, the vital work that they do, Springboard, all the organisations, and of course NICVA based in North Belfast. From a committee's perspective, I think we'll be very keen to follow up with both the department but also with DLUC to see and put pressure from this committee in terms of making a decision and making a early decision. Forthcoming general election can't be something that they use as an excuse. Government continue to make policy decisions on a daily basis that go beyond the mandate of November or January. So from our perspective, I think that it's something that we are clearly united on, ensuring that we get this funding out to you early so you can make long-term strategic decisions. Ultimately, it costs more if you have short-term, late decisions. Morale within staff who are continued to be put on protective notice, they then look at leaving the sector and we lose the knowledge there. Relationships between clients and advisors is all broken down, and I just think it sends a really, really powerful message to have the four of you here today presenting with such passion and an articulation to us. And as Mike says, the future's bright with the work that you are doing. So please be assured of our committee's support, and we'll continue to follow up on the work that you're doing. But just keep doing what you're doing because you're making a real impact across Northern Ireland. And from my perspective and on behalf of the committee, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter, if we could maybe summarise some actions.
The chairperson, as you just indicated, the committee wants to write to Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, just indicating what the chair just articulated there, its support for. And
Christine Robinson is the lady who heads it up here in Northern Ireland.
Okay. This would be the Share Prosperity Funds.
So she heads up the Department for Levelling Up here in Northern Ireland.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll write to the Minister.
Yeah.
Additionally, then maybe write to NICVA and just ask them for the statistics on the job losses in the sector, and then also writing to the department, again, just seeking clarity on the SPF funding position. I guess what they're going to say, but also perhaps indicating the committee's support for the need for a transition process and a co-design for the policy development going forward, and ensuring that there is cooperation between departments in respect of the labour partnerships, which were mentioned by, I think, pretty much all the witnesses there. So if that members are content,
anything else?
Copy that to the Committee for Communities as well. So it sounds like quite a bit of it's with them.
Perfect. Okay, we are now going to move to correspondence at a lightning pace. So page 223, members, there are a summary of that. So item 2 is at page 225. Members are asked to know correspondence from the Education Committee to the Department for the Economy in relation or in respect of a diverse youth NI report. Are people happy to note that report?
Yep.
Thank you. Item 3 at page 244. Members are asked to note correspondence from the Committee for the Executive Office in respect of common frameworks. Is the committee content that the clerk respond indicating that the MRPQ and service frameworks are under consideration by DFE and forwarding relevant correspondence from DLUC?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 4, members, to page 245. Members are asked to consider correspondence from the PIC indicating that the Northern Ireland Audit Office reports that it will not be considering and which can be scrutinised by the Economy Committee. The relevant reports are all relating to COVID support schemes. Is the committee content to note these at this stage and take no further action in relation to those reports? Content, thank you. Item 5, members, at page 251 is the 9th report from the Examiner of Statutory Rules. Are we content to note, members? And thank you. Item 6, members were asked to note correspondence from the House of Lords Windsor Framework Committee to the Minister for Energy Security and Net Zero in respect of EU regulations relating to greenhouse gas emissions. Is the committee content to write to the department seeking its views on the economic impact of that EU regulation? Yep. Thank you. Page 262, members are asked to note a copy of the fuel poverty brief previously distributed to members by email. Is that content? Thank you. Page 282, members are asked to note correspondence from the Renewable Heat Association in respect of its dispute regarding the non-domestic renewable heat incentive scheme. Members may wish to note that the relevant NIAO report estimated the costs of the RHI buyout at 68 million. The figures given in the report for the same buyout could be likely around 240 million. The department's cost to the revised tariff might be likely to be around 20 million from 2019 to the present, with the RHI figures being around 80 million for that period. Is the committee content to acknowledge and note the correspondence pending resolution of the ongoing court action? Yep. Thank you. Item 9, members are asked to note a SSUNI briefing document on North-South student mobility. Are we content to note? Thank you. Item 10, members are asked to note further correspondence from a concerned individual in respect of concerns to the absence of scrutiny of universities. Content to note, members? Yep. Thank you. Item 11, members, then, is just on our tabled pack. This is an invite from Sony to a business breakfast on the 8th of May, and I propose that any member wishing to do so, to attend that, contacts Sony directly to inform them that they wish to attend. Yep. Thank you. Forward work plan, then, Clark.
So, Chairperson, unfortunately, NICMA, the Northern Ireland Child Mining Association, has the council for next week. What I'm suggesting is, if you've just read the news, the Finance Minister hopes that the budget will be agreed very shortly, so perhaps we can ask the department to come along next week and speak to the budget if it is indeed agreed. Additionally, Chair, could I also suggest that since we have the Construction Employers Federation coming next week to talk about the Skills Forum, maybe the committee might also ask them to talk about the Defective Premises Bill. So this is the bill about Victoria Square and what the consequences might be. I think it's quite early days in terms of the policy position, but we could ask Construction Employers Federation to give their views on this. I think they may have already spoken to the Communities Committee about this, so we're content to do that next week. Okay. And then the committee is invited to an informal networking event at the US Consul General's residence on Wednesday, 22nd of May, 4 p.m. to 5:30. Members, can you, or I'll text you all of this again, and you will tell me if they're sort of quite keen to meet with you all again, and it's a networking event, so I will contact you about that individually and come back to confirm your attendance or otherwise. Also, debt relief order legislation, the department's indicating that it might come before the committee on the 5th of June, so this is the debt relief order, you know, the £90 and all that good stuff. Finally then, we've had a bit of a chat about our visit to Foyle. Some of the people that are involved are struggling with June, so I'm suggesting we move it to September. I've emailed you about this. The agenda would be tackling regional imbalances, and that would be Northern and Western Regional Assembly and North West Strategic Growth Partnership. Then Tourism Ireland and Tourism Northern Ireland, talking about the tourism offering in the Northwest. And then hopefully ATU, UU and Northwest Regional College on cross-border educational partnerships. So those would be the three things. Then you'd go, there'd be an informal lunch with Londonderry Chamber of Commerce, and then visit to Foyle Port if we can set that up, and that would be the programme. But that would probably now be September, if that's okay.
I noticed just on that there was an option for either the airport or the port. I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I just felt that the airport was probably more present and probably more relevant to our brief, but I'm content if others have a different opinion on it. If we could fit on both, it'd be brilliant. We can get another dairy deal, but I just think the airport is probably more pertinent in terms of, you know, you're looking at a PSO to London, you're looking at a PSO to Dublin. I think there's more that we will be able to actually assist and scrutinise there, so I just think there's greater potential for
Let's try and do both, keep everyone happy.
Okay, that's agreed, Chairperson?
Yep.
Okay, so members content with those amendments to the forward work programme?
Members content?
Yeah.
Thank you.
More
Any other relevant business, members? If none, we will then meet here again next Wednesday, the 1st of May at 10 a.m. Members content that the committee now adjourn?
Thanks.
Committee Room 30, sound.